the Vermont gubernatorial debate, live from the Echo Leahy Center for Lake Champlain.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Stuart Ledbetter, along with my NBC5 colleagues Stephanie Gorin and Brian Colleran. For the next 60 minutes, we will hear from the 2016 candidates for Governor of Vermont. It's the main event. Let me introduce them to you now. From left to right, we're pleased to welcome the Liberty Union Party candidate, Bill Lee, the Democratic nominee, Sue Minter, and the Republican nominee, Phil Scott. Tonight we'll have opening and closing statements. We'll ask questions. We ask that answers be kept to a minute or else. Intimidating stuff, I know. We'll have some questions from you that you've asked on social media as well. So that's about it. If we're all ready, let's begin. We'll begin with our opening statements, and by the draw, Sue Minter, you go first.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I have been here working with Vermonters in some of our toughest times. As a legislator in the height of the recession, as the Irene recovery officer after flooding tore our state apart, and as a leader in this transportation agency, keeping our roads and bridges safe. I've had the opportunity to work with the Obama White House to combat climate change. I've helped my kids through public school, and like so many parents, worried about paying college tuition bills. And last year I've spent the time traveling our state, talking to Vermonters about our challenges and our opportunities. Together, we can create economic opportunity for the next generation with investing in our communities, creating affordable college, and livable wage jobs. I have a track record of delivering, and I believe Vermont can be a place where we can afford that people can live, work, and stay in the state they love.
Our next opening statement will be from Phil Scott.
Well, thank you very much for having us here tonight, and it's great to be in the studio. I'm running for governor because I believe that we should focus on growing the economy, making Vermont more affordable, and restoring the faith and trust that's been lost throughout state government as well as across the nation. I'm proud of my blue-collar roots. I grew up in Barrie, and it's been part of what's brought me to where I am today. It's building your foundation. And I believe I've been successful in life through my 16 years in politics, 10 years in the Senate, 6 years as lieutenant governor, 25 years of racing, 30 years in business, and 50 years of life, just by treating others the way I expect to be treated, with respect and civility. Despite what you might hear, I'm a moderate, frugal, common sense Vermonter who believes in marriage equality. I'm pro-choice, and I believe in equal pay for equal work. I think the future is bright if we play our cards right and have a governor that is focused on the issues at hand, that focuses on the economy, and is more worried about getting things done than he is about getting credit. So thank you for having us.
Thanks, Bill Lee.
Hello, I'm Bill Lee. I'm from Burbank, California. I'm a 6th generation Californian. The 7th generation was a guy named John Hunt. He was your first lieutenant governor from Dummerston. I'm back. I'm back because I have to run, because we don't want to have a Democrat or a Republican running anything anymore. I believe they're both dinosaurs and they're both defunct. You've got to have a new plan, and I'm the guy to do it. You know, I'm a bonded locksmith. I have a sawmill. I make baseball bats. I make Ortiz's bat. And I won the Vermont State Championship at the age of 69. You're looking at the guy who won and went 12 innings. Hit a one-out double, slid into second under the tag, and was scored when Monroe Weinberger drove me in. You know, I am the difference here. I am so far left, I'm right. I'm a gun-toting liberal. You know, I'm your worst nightmare. If you come into my house, I tell you, as Marcel said, when you come up the hill, you better be a big man if you're going to take my gun.
Thank you very much. Let's move to questions. The first one about taxes and affordability. To some extent, you've all talked about Vermont's affordability challenge. Mr. Scott has repeatedly said he'll raise no tax nor any fee in his first term as governor. But how would this work exactly? How could you say that particularly given the fact that the legislature is once again going to face a budget crunch. Mr. Scott?
Well, thank you for the question, because it's, from my standpoint, it's going to be difficult. But what we need to do is focus on what the reality is. And I believe that all we have to do is look back at the previous year. I'm not saying we have to cut back, but let's limit the growth of the government. Over the last 6 or 7 years, the government has grown, the spending has increased by $700 million during that time. I believe that we should look back at the previous year and see what the economy grew, what wages grew, and if it grew at 1% or 2%, then we limit the rate of growth by that 1 or 2%. We can look through modernization. There's been many, the PICUS report identified $150 million worth of savings. There's $100 million worth of increased administrative costs in Medicaid as well. We have the Shao report that gave us all kinds of $150 million worth of savings there. We need to implement and put into action some of those modernizations, some of those plans to save money, and put the money into areas that we need. So I'm not advocating, which would be nice, to cut the budget, but I'm saying let's not grow it as fast as it's been growing. 5% each year for the last 7 years doesn't do it.
Mr. Lee, no new tax, no new fee. How does that sound to you?
I'm going to have sin tax. I'm going to tax everything that's bad for you. I'm going to put, I'm the guy in Boston that developed the bottle bill with Dukakis. I'm the guy that had Budweiser and Coca-Cola throwing cans at me all the time. They didn't like it. It takes 5 times as much energy to make aluminum. Alcoa knows that. They don't like recycling because recycling is 5 times less. We're going to have smaller farms. We're going to basically go organic like Pete's Greens. We have breweries. We are the answer. Vermont, when it's a Vermont brand, it'll be fine. You raise the minimum wage up to about $15. These kids will start making a livable wage. They'll start paying more taxes. The deficit will come down. I see no problem in this state except the way we eat and how healthy we are, and that goes to our health care. And that's why people are sick, and I believe that the opioid addiction could be stopped by running your children when they're pre-teens all the way through. Get them healthy.
Affordability, Ms. Minter?
What I know is that too many Vermonters are struggling in this economy just to make ends meet because wages are not keeping up with the cost of living. And my mission will be to grow economic opportunity and livable wage jobs for Vermonters. I know that we have challenges ahead, and I will hold the line on increasing income or sales tax rates because the sales tax is the most regressive tax. And I want to make sure what I am looking to do is reduce the burden on the middle class, but look to exemptions for the wealthy, like exemptions on limousine rides or jet owners or lobbyists. You know, this is very important as we look to affordability. Phil's plan looks right out of the National Republican playbook. It's looking to give tax breaks to the wealthy and corporations on the backs of the middle class. That's not what Vermonters need.
Let's talk education. For all Vermont spends on K through 12 education, now pre-K through 12 education, the state ranks dead last in support for higher education. Ms. Minter has proposed 2 years of free community or technical college tuition. Is that the answer, or do you have a better one? Let's start with Mr. Lee.
I like 4 years free, but you got to dedicate yourself to the state. You got to stay in here and work in the state. I believe I like Montessori school. All my kids were Montessori kids. My last daughter was a Waldorf girl from Wolcott. You know, they all had alternative upbringings. They became what I call diversified and generalists. They weren't specialists. I believe our education is wrong. The race to the top that Obama had was wrong. No Child Left Behind by Bush was wrong. As far as affordability, we're going to have plenty of money if I'm governor because we're going to break down the bigger farms. We're going to start taking care of our lakes. We're going to be the biggest destination place in the United States because it's Vermont. It's where everybody wants to go. It's the most beautiful place in the world.
Ms. Minter, it's your plan.
Well, I appreciate how important it is that we deal with education. Education is the most important thing we do for our future. Our kids are our future. And it concerns me greatly that right now in Vermont, over 40% of our kids are coming to kindergarten unready to learn, which is why I am focusing on affordable childcare, but also beyond high school. Right now, two-thirds of our jobs of our 21st century economy require some kind of education and training after high school. But in Vermont, 4 out of 10 kids don't continue on. And that's why we need 2 years tuition-free at community or technical college to build a pathway to qualifying for livable wage jobs. You know, I was in Brattleboro talking to Commonwealth Dairy. They would grow tomorrow, but they can't find livable wage jobs. They can't find a workforce. And then I'm visiting with young Vermonters who tell me about what it's like for their peers who didn't go beyond high school and how they can't make ends meet. And we've got to connect the dots. We've got to give kids the aspiration and the opportunity to build pathways out of poverty and into livable wage jobs.
Mr. Scott.
Well, let's set up the problem. You know, we're educating 86,000 kids, 20,000 less kids than we were 20 years ago. And it's costing $1.6 billion to do so. I'm saying that there are cost savings within that realm, that we can institute the Pikus report, for instance, and find $150 million worth of savings. And we can invest early in early ed, which I think is essential. But we can do so within the parameters of what we're already spending. In terms of free college, there's nothing free in this world. Somebody has to pay. And I'm not looking to increase the cost of living on already struggling working families across Vermont. And I know that Sue has said that the banks will pay. They'll just institute a fee on them and that they will pay. But the reality is they don't absorb it. They pass it on to consumers. And we're the consumers. So we're going to pay and increase the already burden of the cost of living in Vermont.
Do I get to rebut?
Does she get to reply?
30 seconds.
Look, I am looking to pay for an incredibly important plan. $6 million in the first year, and we can ask the largest banks, out-of-state banks, making more than $750 million of deposits to invest in our future. It's a win-win-win. It's a win for our kids and our family. It's a win for our businesses who need a workforce, and it's a win for the economy. Education equals workforce equals economic development and growth. That's something that Vermonters need. And you know what? When you get an associate's degree, you earn $12,000 more, and that's what bankers need.
Moving on, Massachusetts and Maine are voting on legalizing marijuana next month. Vermont lawmakers tabled that idea this session. What will you do if a bill lands on your desk in the next biennium? Sign or veto, and why? Ms. Minter, we start with you.
Well, I do support legalization, and the reason is because prohibition isn't working. Kids have greater access to alcohol than they do to marijuana, and what is being used on the black market is sometimes potent. What I will be looking to implement is a bill that does 3 things. Number 1, sets up a system of regulation and distribution. Second, as a mom, I want to make absolutely sure we are investing in prevention and education. We have got to up our substance abuse prevention and education program. Third, as the former Secretary of Transportation, I want to ensure that we do not exacerbate our impaired driving problem. Because right now we have a problem. We have no way to evaluate impairment from marijuana use. We need to have enforcement capabilities and a test to determine whether someone is using so that we can enforce safety on our roads.
Mr. Lee?
She's right. You know, legalization will take all the criminal element out of it. It'll take people out of incarceration. It will take police to do their job on other things. You tax it, you make money on it. You know, we got to go to the European plan on opioids too. We got to go on everything, and you've got to put it back into the medical side's hands and not into the police and the enforcement side. It hasn't worked. It didn't work. The war on drugs. Art Fuss. You know, I came out and said I smoked marijuana, or I used marijuana in 1979 when I got traded. I get fined $250 for using marijuana as a condiment because I didn't smoke it. They said I put it on my pancakes. I mean, I've been on the cover of High Times 3 times, and I'm still healthy, I'm still productive, and I'm still doing the job. And I believe that they say marijuana is a gateway drug. For me, it was a gateway drug. It was a gateway to quit drinking and to go to sleep.
Mr. Scott.
We have 4 states that have legalized thus far, and all by referendum, not by legislation. When we take a look at all those states, take Colorado for instance, the governor of Colorado has said as recently as last January that his advice to any state that is looking to legalize is to wait a couple of years. Let them work through the issues. Let them determine impairment on their highways. Let them work on the edible situation. Let them work on the commercialization. It's all about the ripple effects, and there's no reason we shouldn't be moving forward just about the money. This is a huge policy decision for us, and we don't want to get this wrong. We can't afford to implement this and get it wrong. So I'm saying, let's take a step back. Let's watch the other states and make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that they do. And for those that think that this is going to, this utopia of thinking about you're going to be able to buy your pot down at your local farmer's market, I'd say that the Seagrams of the world, the R.J. Reynolds of the world, they're licking their chops at this very moment, thinking about the next income for them and the next product that they can sell.
We've been soliciting your questions on social media, and our NBC5 colleague Leanne Denyer has the next question.
Yes, social media has played such a critical role this campaign season at the presidential level as well as at the local level. Lots of our viewers weighing in on Twitter and Facebook, and they brought us some questions to share with you guys today. And we're going to start specifically with Becky Dwyer. She wrote to us on Facebook, should Vermont create a tax on carbon fuels to discourage fossil fuel use? Under what circumstances would you sign that bill? We're going to start with Mr. Lee.
Immediately. Take down the Wind Ridge, take all down the credits that are going to Ohio and the steel states. That's what our pollution is. That's the problem. We've gone out and sold our soul to the Dutch who built the windmills and created the windmills, and to the basically to the grid. That's what we're doing. We're ruining our skyline because for the sake of the rest of these people, because they can't get their act together. Yeah, I'm definitely going to have. I'm not a fossil fuel guy. They call it a fossil fuel because they aren't making any more of it. I'm a biodiesel guy. I am a wind guy, but on a small level, on every power pole, on every side of everybody's house. They have 2 of them. You just do it right. You do it small, like Schumacher said. Small is better. Limits to growth. We don't need growth. We just need smartness between the ears.
Mr. Scott, you're next.
I would veto it if it hit my desk. I believe that this will just ratchet up the cost of living across Vermont. I don't think that we can afford it. I'm not looking to do anything that would raise the cost of living on already struggling Vermonters. And the carbon tax would be an area that would definitely raise the cost of living in Vermont.
Thank you. Ms. Minter?
I do not support, I'm opposed to a carbon tax, but I am very concerned about climate change. And I think it is clear that climate change is not just real, it is here, it is having an enormous effect on all of us. Let's remember the winter that wasn't last year. What happened to our ski areas and all of the businesses connected to them? What happened to the general stores up in the Northeast Kingdom when the snow machines didn't come? We have to take this on. And I have plans to address climate change, focusing on growing our clean, green energy future here, looking at collaborating with other northeastern states like we've done before to reduce carbon emissions. We have to do this. It's about our economy, and it's about what the opportunity is. You know, we have a growing energy efficiency and clean energy economy. Fastest growing part of our economy, 17,000 new jobs, good paying jobs where young people are coming to Vermont to be a part of our green energy. We need to continue to move forward, not just to help to address climate change, but to support our economy and bring young people here. We can make a difference.
Thanks. Well, with 2 weeks to go, anyone with a television has surely noticed by now that outside political action committees are flooding our state with commercials trying to influence this race. Mr. Scott, you've said that the Planned Parenthood ads that are running against you are deceptive for implying that you'd restrict abortion. Ms. Minter is portrayed by the Republican Governors Association as a bobblehead and a puppet of Peter Shumlin, ready to raise lots of new taxes.
What do I get?
If you would please set the record straight. Ms. Minter, let's start with you.
Well, let's talk about what's happening in this election, because money is pouring into this state. The Republican Governors Association, whose largest funder are the oil billionaire Koch brothers, have actually already spent over $2 million to defeat me. Now, you know, I've just had an incredible weekend with Bernie Sanders, traveling around, meeting thousands of Vermonters who are excited about the opportunities to address the key issues: livable wage jobs, affordable college, and dealing with climate change. And you know, I have to say, what I know is so important is that, sorry, Phil, but these people know that Vermont is not for sale in this election.
Mr. Lee.
Well, you see 3 of us up here. I'm the only one that has a bobblehead doll. So, you know, Phil's wrong. You shouldn't have that. It's a terrible prank, and it probably is the Koch brothers. Those 2 jerks have been behind everything from George W. Bush, Halliburton. They're the ones that had Rumsfeld go in there and say, oh, I didn't shake hands with Saddam Hussein. And then they go back and show him the footage, and he goes, yeah, that looks a lot like me. You know, so don't believe. I'm the only guy. I've taken $20. I took $20 from a guy from Wisconsin. He was 91 years old, and he had a hospital ban. He'd already seen our hospital system here. I said, sir, I don't want your money. He says, you have to take it because I've already sold it for $40, the canceled check. So you're right. You got to get rid of Citizens United. All the things we're talking about in the state, all our problems will go away if you get rid of money in politics. Citizens United, get rid of that. You know, get in someone in our Supreme Court that has the guts to vote.
Mr. Scott?
I think it is unfortunate to have some of the ads that have run against both Sue and myself during this campaign. I've never run a negative ad in my entire political life. This is my 9th election. Never done it, never will. I think it's unfortunate. But as we've seen with this last ad with Planned Parenthood, here, I'm pro-choice. When they talked on the national level about defunding Planned Parenthood, I said that's a bad idea. I think they do great work for women's health, and I think we should preserve them. I went and visited them, so I'm one that promotes them. And yet there's an ad that comes out that's funded by the Democratic Governors Association. They put $350,000 into Vermont Planned Parenthood to work against me. And I think it's so unfortunate when you have this division, when you try and create these wedges, when you're having people that really understand and are trying to do what's best for Vermont to work against you in that fashion.
Do you disavow the bobblehead ad?
Yeah, I think it's nothing that I would run. I think it's terrible.
Ms. Minter, do you disavow the Planned Parenthood ad?
What I can say is, Phil, welcome to my world. This has been happening.
It's been happening to me as
3
well,
months.
Sue. You know, I mean,
and
it's
the
both
other
of
thing
us.
I want to say is that it isn't just the outside groups. Phil, I heard today on the radio say things that he knows is untrue. He has said that I am planning to support a carbon tax, which every single time I've been asked, and we've been on the same programs together, and he continues to say those things. So I want to make sure we do talk about the issues, because that's what matters. But let's make sure we try to be accurate. Neither of us have control over outside groups, and we'll make sure that we try to keep the record straight.
I'm squeaking clean on this.
She hasn't answered the question yet, though.
Final word.
Sue hasn't answered the question. You asked about whether she disavowed.
The Planned Parenthood ad.
And
Do you take,
she didn't
Mr.
answer.
Scott at his word on that?
Well, I think I am the only candidate who actually supports a woman's right to choose without exceptions.
Me too.
And I think that isn't. Okay, I'll say
But
one of the.
that's normal. We're right. We're the future. You know, I'm telling you, you got to get rid of all this stuff because everybody has rights. Black lives matter. Women's rights matter. Why do we have these problems? Why are we even bringing up any of these slogans out there? Because I'm embarrassed to be an American this year. I am embarrassed. That's why I live in Vermont. I chose Vermont to get away from this stuff. And what does it do? It follows me up into the Northeast Kingdom. I want to get rid of the border. I want to go north. You know, the Second Vermont Republic. Let's go.
Let's move on to the next subject.
You know, it deserves an answer because the vice presidential candidate on the Democratic side is pro-life. And I don't see any Planned Parenthood ads running against him. I just think it's so unfortunate. And when you talk about the carbon tax, you say that you haven't promoted it. But you haven't said that you'd veto it either. We talked about this earlier, and it never came out of your mouth.
She was pretty clear a few minutes ago, but we got to move on
So
to another
we can talk about the issue
subject.
on choice, because I think it's worth mentioning that at a time when there are over 400 bills sponsored in legislatures across this country restricting a woman's right to choose, when we have a man running for president who boasts about sexually assaulting women, it is important to recognize that we need a governor in Vermont who is going to stand up for a woman's right to choose without exception.
We've got a lot of issues to talk about tonight. Let's move on to gun control. This is a three-part question. 1, do you own a gun? 2, how many? And do you agree with the 84% of Vermonters polled recently who say they want universal background checks for all purchases, whether it be from a store, a gun show, or a private sale? And we're going to start with the gun toter, Mr. Lee.
That's me. I got a 36 caliber rimfire, Colt conversion. They believe it belonged to Jesse James. He couldn't hit doodly squat with that, neither can I. I tell you, I've got an AR, Browning. I have a plug in it. Why do I have a plug in it? Because all responsible gun owners know that you're only allowed 3 shots on migratory fowl. And you ain't gonna hit a partridge on the 3rd shot because you ain't gonna see it. So I know how to hunt. I know gun safety. And we have to have checks and balances on people. And if a guy says he wants a Glock 17, he's probably should get 2 geese. 2 geese on his porch. They'll scare people away because he ain't gonna hit anything with them anyway. And you gotta have psychological reviews of all these people. Just because you want a gun, how about the lady in Walmart that had the beautiful gun in her purse and the 2-year-old took it out and shot her right there in Walmart? I mean, we can't have that stuff. You know, I'm a gun owner. I hunt. My maiden name's Hunt. You know, I'm going to hunt for a living.
So to be clear, you are for universal background checks?
Oh, sure I am. I'm for that. I'm for psychological checks. People that own guns, most of them don't deserve to own guns. They're not true hunters. They're not true sportsmen. They're afraid. You're afraid by a dog.
Yes, I do own guns. I have probably a dozen guns. I've been hunting my entire life. I got my first gun when I was about 12, and I've been an avid sportsman for my entire life. But I don't believe that we need any more gun laws change. I believe that we should enforce the laws that are on the books at this point in time. I think we should look at the root of the problem, which is the violence, which leads from mental health issues, from the opioid problem, and as well as economic issues. And I think that that's the root of the problem. And look beyond the weapon, because the weapon is just a means of doing harm. It isn't the root of the problem.
Ms. Minter?
I do not own a gun, although my father does. I will tell you I am a strong supporter. I do stand with the 84% of Vermonters who support common sense gun safety, background checks for all gun sales. I support the Second Amendment and everyone's right to own a gun if they pass the background check. I'm not interested in taking guns away. I'm interested in keeping guns out of the wrong hands. And let's just talk about why. We do have a gun safety issue in Vermont. And what I'm talking about is actually behind closed doors. Domestic violence, which is a very serious issue in our state. We had in 2013 the 8th highest rate of domestic violence in the nation. The majority of our homicides in Vermont are domestic violence related, most of them with a firearm. And in states that pass universal background checks on all handgun sales, 46% fewer women are shot to death by their intimate partners. So I will stand strong and support background checks in Vermont for all gun sales.